The desert heat shimmered across the Marine Corps training facility as Sergeant Maria Santos stepped off the transport truck. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her brown eyes surveyed the compound with practiced calm. At 28, she had already served 3 tours overseas, but none of the other soldiers climbing down from vehicles around her knew that yet. The Quantico Scout Sniper School was legendary for breaking even the toughest Marines. Only the most elite shooters ever made it through the grueling 13-week program. Maria had fought hard for this opportunity, and she wasn't about to let anyone's doubts stop her from succeeding. As she grabbed her gear bag, she heard the first whisper from a group of male Marines standing nearby. "Great. They're letting girls into Scout Sniper School now. Probably some diversity quota thing. She'll wash out in the first week. $20 says she doesn't make it past the psychological evaluation." Maria kept her expression neutral. She had heard worse during her time in the Corps. Growing up in a rough neighborhood in East Los Angeles, she had learned early that actions spoke louder than words. Her older brothers had taught her to fight, but her grandfather, a Korean War veteran, had taught her to shoot. The drill instructors began herding the new arrivals toward the briefing room. Maria counted 32 students in total. She was the only woman. Staff Sergeant Michael Rodriguez stood at the front of the room, his weathered face scanning the assembled Marines. Behind him hung photos of previous graduating classes, all men. His voice cut through the air like a blade. "Welcome to the worst 13 weeks of your military career. Look around you. 60% of you will not graduate. This course will test everything you think you know about yourself." He began pacing in front of the room. "Scout snipers are the most feared weapons in the Marine Corps arsenal. You don't just pull a trigger. You are a weapon system, mind, body, rifle, and ammunition working as one perfect machine." His eyes briefly met Maria's. She saw neither approval nor disapproval, just professional assessment. "You will learn to move like ghosts, to think like hunters, to kill with precision at distances most people can't even see. But first, you have to prove you belong here." The first test came immediately after the briefing. Physical training that would make most people vomit. Maria had prepared for months, running extra miles and doing additional strength training. As they ran through the Virginia heat, several men began falling behind. Maria maintained her pace, breathing steady and controlled. Private Danny Chen, a young Marine from California, fell into step beside her during the 5-mile run. He was one of the few who hadn't made comments about her presence. "You're keeping up pretty well," he said between breaths. "I trained for this," Maria replied simply. "Where are you stationed?" "Camp Pendleton. You?" "Same. Weird we never crossed paths before." Maria didn't explain that she had been deployed for most of the past 3 years. That conversation would come later, if at all. That evening in the barracks, she carefully arranged her gear according to regulations. Her rifle case lay on her bunk. A standard-issue M40A5 that she would soon modify and customize for the training ahead. She had brought her own scope, a high-quality piece of equipment she had purchased with her own money. Corporal Jake Harrison, a loud-mouthed Marine from Texas, walked past her bunk and noticed the scope. "Fancy equipment for someone who probably doesn't know how to use it," he said loud enough for others to hear. "Must have cost more than your truck back home," another Marine added, laughing. Maria continued organizing her gear without responding. She had learned that proving herself took time and patience. Words were just noise. The next morning brought their first trip to the shooting range. This was where many students would begin to separate themselves from the pack. The instructors had set up targets at various distances, starting at 300 yards and extending to 800 yards. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez explained the day's exercise. "This is your baseline evaluation. We need to see what you can do before we start breaking down your bad habits and building you back up properly." Each student would fire 10 rounds at each distance. The instructors would record their scores and group sizes. Maria watched as the first few Marines took their turns. Some performed well, others struggled with the longer distances. When her turn came, she approached the firing line with calm confidence. She had been shooting since she was 12 years old, first with her grandfather's old hunting rifle, later with military weapons during her deployments. She settled into position behind her rifle, adjusting the scope for the first target at 300 yards. The wind was light, but shifting slightly from the east. She made a small adjustment and controlled her breathing. Her first shot hit dead center. The second shot grouped within an inch of the first. By her fifth shot, the instructors were paying close attention. All 10 shots at 300 yards had grouped within a 2-inch circle. At 500 yards, her grouping was just as tight. The whispered comments from other students had stopped entirely. Everyone was watching now. The 800-yard target presented a real challenge. At that distance, even experienced snipers had to account for wind drift, bullet drop, and atmospheric conditions. Maria studied the target through her scope, noting the way heat waves distorted the air near the ground. She adjusted her scope settings and took careful aim. Her breathing slowed to an almost meditative rhythm. The rifle seemed to become an extension of her body as she gently squeezed the trigger. The first shot at 800 yards hit the 10 ring. The second shot hit even closer to center. By her 10th shot, she had achieved something that made even Staff Sergeant Rodriguez raise his eyebrows. All 10 shots had grouped within a 4-inch circle at 800 yards. As she cleared her rifle and stood up from the firing position, the range had gone completely silent. Even Corporal Harrison wasn't making jokes anymore. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez approached her position to examine the target. He studied the tight shot grouping for a long moment before speaking. "Santos, where did you learn to shoot like that?" "My grandfather taught me the basics, Staff Sergeant. The rest came from practice." "How much practice?" "Every chance I could get, Staff Sergeant." He nodded slowly, then addressed the entire class. "This is what a baseline looks like when someone takes shooting seriously. Santos just demonstrated what proper fundamentals and consistent practice can accomplish." That evening, the atmosphere in the barracks was different. Some of the Marines looked at Maria with new respect. Others seemed even more resentful than before. Private Chen approached her bunk after chow time. "That was incredible shooting today. You made it look easy." "It's never easy," Maria replied. "But if you practice enough, it becomes natural." "Any tips for someone who's struggling with the long-range stuff?" Maria considered her response carefully. Making friends too quickly could be seen as weakness, but helping fellow Marines was part of the job. "The most important thing is consistent breathing and trigger control. Most people rush the shot. The rifle will tell you when it's ready to fire." Chen nodded thoughtfully. "Mind if I ask where you learned all this? You shoot like you've been doing it professionally for years." Before Maria could answer, Corporal Harrison interrupted from across the room. "Probably had some boyfriend teacher. Or maybe Daddy was a hunter who always wanted a son." Several Marines laughed, but the sound was more nervous than genuinely amused. Harrison's comments carried less confidence than they had that morning. Maria turned to face him directly. "My grandfather taught me to respect the rifle and the responsibility that comes with it. Everything else I learned the same way everyone else does. Practice and dedication." "Right," Harrison said with a smirk. "Well, one good day at the range doesn't make you a sniper. Wait until we get into the real training. Moving targets, field conditions, stress shoots. That's when we'll see what you're really made of." "I look forward to it," Maria replied calmly. The next few days brought a whirlwind of classroom instruction. Students learned about ballistics, weather conditions, range estimation, and camouflage techniques. Maria took detailed notes and asked thoughtful questions. Her military experience showed in her understanding of tactical concepts. During a lesson on wind reading, she correctly identified wind patterns that other students missed. When they studied camouflage, she demonstrated field techniques that impressed even the instructors. It was during a navigation exercise that Maria's background began to show even more clearly. The class was divided into teams and given coordinates to find using only map and compass. Most teams struggled with the challenging terrain around Quantico. Maria's team, which included Chen and 2 other Marines, found their objective in record time. She had navigated through dense forest and rough terrain as if she had done it hundreds of times before. "How did you know to avoid that swampy area?" one of her teammates asked as they headed back to the starting point. "Experience," she said simply. "You learn to read terrain the same way you read wind patterns. It all tells you a story if you know how to listen." They were the first team to return with their objective complete. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez marked their time and nodded with approval. "Outstanding navigation, Team Leader Santos. Where did you learn those skills?" "Field experience, Staff Sergeant." "What kind of field experience?" Maria hesitated for just a moment. She wasn't ready to reveal the full extent of her background yet. "I've done some hiking and camping, Staff Sergeant, and I pay attention during field training exercises." It was technically true, though it barely scratched the surface of her actual experience moving through hostile territory during her deployments. As the first week progressed, Maria continued to excel in every area of training. Her shooting remained exceptional, her physical fitness was outstanding, and her tactical knowledge seemed far beyond what most Marines possessed at her rank. Other students began seeking her advice on shooting techniques. Even some who had initially resented her presence started showing grudging respect, but not everyone was happy about her success. Corporal Harrison became increasingly vocal about his belief that Maria was receiving special treatment. He complained to anyone who would listen that the instructors were going easy on her because of political pressure to graduate a female student. "Mark my words," he told a group of students during a break between training sessions. "They're going to pass her no matter what. This whole thing is just for show." His comments were creating division among the students. Some agreed with him, others defended Maria's obvious skills. The tension was building toward an inevitable confrontation. It came during their first stress shoot exercise. The stress shoot was designed to test a student's ability to perform under pressure. Each Marine had to complete an exhausting physical challenge, then immediately move to the firing line and engage targets with precision. Heart rate would be elevated, breathing would be labored, and hands might be shaking from fatigue. Maria completed her physical challenge alongside the other students, running, crawling, rope climbing, and carrying heavy equipment across rough terrain. When she reached the firing line, her breathing was controlled despite the exertion. She settled behind her rifle and began engaging targets. Her first shot was perfect center mass. Her second and third shots were equally precise. Despite the physical stress, her shooting remained flawless. Harrison, who was shooting at the position next to hers, was struggling. His shots were scattered across the target, missing the scoring rings entirely. Sweat poured down his face, and his hands were visibly shaking. When the exercise ended, his frustration boiled over. "This is bullshit," he announced loudly. "She's not even breathing hard. How is that possible unless they went easy on her during the physical portion?" Staff Sergeant Rodriguez overheard the comment and approached Harrison's position. "Is there something you'd like to say, Corporal Harrison?" Harrison looked around at the other students, many of whom were nodding encouragement. He had worked himself into a corner and felt pressure to continue his complaints. "I'm just saying it seems convenient that she's the only one who isn't affected by the stress portion of this exercise. Maybe she didn't complete the same physical challenges the rest of us did." The range went quiet. Everyone understood that Harrison was essentially accusing the instructors of cheating on Maria's behalf. It was a serious allegation that could not go unanswered. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez studied Harrison for a long moment. Then he turned to Maria. "Santos, did you complete the same physical challenges as everyone else?" "Yes, Staff Sergeant." "And you're not experiencing elevated heart rate or breathing difficulties?" I am experiencing both, Staff Sergeant, but I trained to shoot under those conditions. Explain. Maria realized she was about to reveal more about her background than she had planned. But Harrison's accusations left her no choice. During my previous deployments, I was often required to move quickly through difficult terrain and then engage targets immediately afterward. I specifically trained for those situations, Staff Sergeant. Previous deployments? Rodriguez's eyebrows rose slightly. How many deployments? 3, Staff Sergeant. A murmur went through the assembled students. 3 deployments was significant combat experience for anyone, especially for someone Maria's age. What was your primary job during those deployments? Designated marksman, Staff Sergeant, attached to infantry units conducting combat operations. The range fell completely silent. A designated marksman was essentially a sniper operating at the squad level. It was a position that required exceptional shooting skills and the ability to perform under extreme stress. Harrison's face had gone pale. He was beginning to understand that he had seriously misjudged the woman he had been dismissing as unqualified. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez nodded slowly. That explains the shooting skills and stress tolerance. Santos, why didn't you mention your background during your initial interview? I didn't think it was relevant, Staff Sergeant. Everyone here earned their slot based on their qualifications. I wanted to be judged on my performance in this course, not my previous experience. Understood. However, your background is now relevant to address Corporal Harrison's concerns about fairness. He turned to face the entire class. Sergeant Santos has combat experience as a designated marksman. That experience has obviously prepared her well for the challenges we're presenting here. There is no special treatment being given to any student, and I will not tolerate suggestions otherwise. He fixed Harrison with a hard stare. Corporal Harrison, you have a choice. You can focus on your own performance and learn from students who demonstrate superior skills, or you can continue making accusations about imaginary favoritism. Choose wisely. Harrison mumbled an acknowledgement, clearly embarrassed by the public correction. As the students prepared to leave the range, Chen approached Maria. Designated marksman? That's serious business. No wonder you make this look easy. Nothing about this is easy, Maria replied. The only difference is that I've done similar things before under much worse conditions. What kind of worse conditions? Maria looked at him for a moment, considering how much to reveal. The kind where missing your shot means your squad doesn't go home. That evening, word of Maria's background spread through the barracks quickly. The revelation changed how other students viewed her presence in the school. She wasn't just a woman trying to prove herself in a male-dominated field. She was a combat veteran with real-world experience that many of them lacked. Some students began approaching her with genuine respect, asking for advice on shooting techniques and tactical questions. Others, particularly those who had allied themselves with Harrison's earlier complaints, seemed resentful that their assumptions had been proven wrong. Maria found herself in an interesting position. Her cover was partially blown, but she still hadn't revealed the full extent of her combat experience. 3 tours as a designated marksman was impressive, but it wasn't the complete story. During her second deployment to Afghanistan, she had been attached to a special operations unit conducting deep reconnaissance missions. Her job had been to provide precision fire support for operations that never appeared in official reports. It was during that deployment that she had earned the marks on her rifle that gave this story its title. Small notches carved discreetly into the stock of her personal weapon. Each mark represented a confirmed kill in combat. There were more marks than anyone at the school would have guessed. But that part of her story would remain hidden for now. She had learned that revealing too much too quickly could be as dangerous as revealing too little. As she prepared for sleep that night, Maria reflected on her first week at sniper school. She had proven she could shoot, but shooting was only part of what made a successful scout sniper. The real challenges were still ahead. Tomorrow would bring new tests of her skills and determination. Field exercises, stalking challenges, and advanced shooting scenarios that would push even experienced shooters to their limits. She was ready for whatever came next. After 3 combat deployments and countless hours of training, she had learned that the only way forward was through. No matter what obstacles the instructors placed in front of her, no matter what doubts her fellow students harbored, she would prove that she belonged here. The Marines had taught her that earning respect was a continuous process, not a one-time event. Tomorrow, she would continue that process, one shot at a time. The second week of sniper school brought the students face-to-face with one of the most challenging aspects of the program: stalking. This wasn't just about moving quietly through the woods. It was about becoming invisible while carrying a full combat load and positioning yourself for the perfect shot. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez stood in front of the class as dawn broke over the Virginia countryside. Behind him stretched thousands of acres of dense forest, swampland, and rocky terrain that would test every student's ability to move like a ghost. "Today you begin learning the art of fieldcraft," he announced. "Any fool can hit a target from a comfortable position on a flat range. A scout sniper must be able to infiltrate enemy territory, establish a firing position without being detected, and engage targets under combat conditions." He gestured toward the tree line. "Instructors are positioned throughout this training area with high-powered optics. Your job is to move from your starting position to your objective without being spotted. Then you must identify and engage a target from an unknown distance." Maria listened carefully as he explained the exercise rules. Students would start 1,000 meters from their objective. They had 3 hours to reach their firing position and engage their target. If spotted by an instructor during movement, they would fail the exercise immediately. "This is where most students begin to wash out," Rodriguez continued. "Moving unseen requires patience, planning, and skills that take years to develop properly. Don't expect to master it in one day." The students were divided into groups and given different starting positions. Maria found herself paired with Chen and 2 other Marines she hadn't worked with closely before. Corporal Harrison was in a different group, which suited everyone just fine. As they studied their assigned route on the map, Maria quickly identified the challenges they would face: open ground that offered little concealment, a stream crossing that could expose them to observation, and a final approach that required climbing elevated terrain. "This looks impossible," muttered Private Williams, one of their team members. "How are we supposed to cross that open area without being seen?" "We don't cross it," Maria said simply. "We go around it." She traced an alternative route on the map that added distance but used available cover more effectively. The route would take them through thicker woods and along a depression that would mask their movement from most observation points. "That's going to add at least an hour to our movement time," Williams protested. "Better to arrive late and unseen than early and spotted," Maria replied. Chen studied her proposed route carefully. "This makes sense, but how do you know those observation points won't be covered?" "I'm making educated guesses based on terrain analysis and what instructors typically look for. We'll adjust our route as we gather more information during movement." When the exercise began, Maria's team moved out using her suggested path. She took point, setting a pace that was slower than what most students wanted, but fast enough to reach their objective on time. Her movement through the forest was different from anything the other students had seen. She seemed to flow around obstacles rather than pushing through them. Every step was deliberate and silent. She read the terrain ahead constantly, adjusting their route to avoid areas where they might be silhouetted or exposed. After 2 hours of careful movement, they reached a position where they could observe their objective area. Through binoculars, Maria spotted 2 instructors with powerful spotting scopes positioned to watch the most obvious approach routes. "There," she whispered, pointing out their locations to her teammates. "And there's probably a 3rd observer we can't see yet." "How do you know all this?" Williams asked quietly. "Experience," she replied. "This is how you set up surveillance to catch people trying to infiltrate your position." She continued studying the terrain around their objective, noting wind direction, available concealment, and potential firing positions. After several minutes of observation, she identified their best approach route. "We'll use that ravine to get within 200 meters, then low crawl through the tall grass to reach those rocks. From there, we should have clear shots at whatever target they've set up." The final approach took nearly an hour of painstaking movement. Maria led the way, moving inches at a time through grass and brush. Her camouflage techniques were flawless, using natural vegetation to break up her outline and moving only when wind or other natural sounds could mask any noise. When they finally reached their firing position, all 4 team members were exhausted but undetected. Maria quickly identified their target, a man-sized silhouette positioned 400 meters away. She settled behind her rifle and began her target analysis. Wind was shifting slightly from the west, temperature was rising as the morning progressed, and the target appeared to be at a slightly higher elevation than their position. Her shot broke clean and hit the target center mass. Chen followed with a good shot of his own, while Williams and the 4th team member both scored hits in the scoring area. When the exercise ended and the instructors revealed themselves, Maria's team was the only one that had reached their objective without being spotted. 3 other teams had been eliminated during movement, and 2 more had been detected while establishing their firing positions. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez approached their position to debrief their performance. "Outstanding fieldcraft, Team Leader Santos. That was some of the best stalking I've seen from students in years. Where did you learn to move like that?" "Training and practice, Staff Sergeant." "What kind of training involves that level of infiltration technique?" Maria hesitated. Each question was pushing her closer to revealing more than she wanted to share. "Combat operations, Staff Sergeant. Moving through hostile territory requires those kinds of skills." "As a designated marksman?" "Yes, Staff Sergeant." "Among other duties." Rodriguez nodded slowly. He was clearly beginning to understand that Maria's background was more extensive than her initial file suggested. That afternoon brought their first introduction to advanced shooting positions. Students learned to engage targets while lying prone, sitting, kneeling, and standing. They practiced shooting from behind various types of cover and concealment. Maria excelled in every position, but it was her performance shooting from awkward positions that really caught attention. When instructors required students to engage targets while hanging upside down from a climbing structure, most struggled to maintain any accuracy at all. Maria's shots remained consistently on target even from the most challenging positions. Her body seemed to adapt naturally to any shooting stance, maintaining the steady platform necessary for precision shooting. "Jesus," Chen whispered to Williams as they watched her performance. "She's like a machine. How does anyone get that good?" "Lots of practice," Williams replied, "but I'm starting to think there's more to her story than just being a designated marksman." That evening, rumors and speculation about Maria's background intensified. Students shared theories about her previous assignments and tried to guess why someone with her obvious skills was attending sniper school. Corporal Harrison, still smarting from his earlier embarrassment, had developed a new theory that he shared with anyone who would listen. "I think she's some kind of special operations washout," he told a group of students during evening free time. "Maybe she couldn't cut it in the real elite units, so they sent her here to make her feel better." His comments found some support among students who were struggling with the course material and looking for explanations for Maria's superior performance. But his theory fell apart the next day during their first combat simulation exercise. The scenario was designed to test students' ability to function as part of a team under simulated combat stress. Using training ammunition and elaborate props, instructors created a realistic battlefield environment where students had to work together to complete mission objectives. Maria's team was assigned to establish overwatch positions and provide precision fire support for a simulated assault on an enemy stronghold. The exercise would test their ability to coordinate with other units, engage targets at various distances, and adapt to changing tactical situations. When the exercise began, Maria quickly established communications with the assault teams and began identifying target priorities. Her experience coordinating with infantry units was immediately obvious. Overwatch 1, this is Assault Leader. We need suppression fire on the building at grid 345782. Roger, Assault Leader. I have eyes on 2 enemy positions in that building. Engaging now. Maria's first shot eliminated a target in a second-story window. Her second shot took out an enemy position that had been firing on the advancing assault team. Her target identification and engagement sequence was flawless, but it was her response to an unexpected development that really demonstrated her experience level. Halfway through the exercise, instructors introduced a complication designed to test students' ability to adapt under pressure. A simulated casualty evacuation scenario that required the sniper teams to provide covering fire while medical personnel evacuated wounded soldiers. Most student teams struggled with the sudden change in mission requirements. They had difficulty coordinating with the medical teams and failed to maintain effective overwatch during the evacuation. Maria immediately recognized what was happening and began directing her team's response. Chen, shift your sector to cover the east approach. Williams, I need you watching that tree line for flanking movement. I'll cover the evacuation route. She began engaging targets that threatened the medical evacuation, calling out target locations and coordinating fires with other sniper teams. Her radio communications were calm and professional, using proper military terminology and procedures. Overwatch 2, this is Overwatch 1. You have enemy movement in your sector, 200 meters north of the main building, 2 individuals with automatic weapons. Roger, Overwatch 1. I see them. Engaging now. The exercise continued for over an hour, with scenarios becoming increasingly complex and demanding. Maria's performance remained consistently excellent throughout, demonstrating tactical knowledge and leadership skills that impressed even the instructors. When the exercise ended, her team had achieved all mission objectives while sustaining no simulated casualties. Most other teams had suffered multiple casualties and failed to complete primary objectives. During the debrief, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez addressed the entire class. Today's exercise revealed significant differences in experience levels among students. Some of you demonstrated advanced tactical knowledge and leadership abilities that exceed normal expectations for this course. His eyes found Maria in the group of assembled students. Santos, your performance today suggests combat experience beyond what we typically see from designated marksmen. Your radio procedures, target prioritization, and team coordination were at the level we expect from much more senior personnel. Maria maintained her military bearing, but felt the weight of increased scrutiny from both instructors and fellow students. I tried to apply what I learned during previous deployments. Staff Sergeant, what specific type of operations gave you experience with complex tactical scenarios like today's exercise? The question she had been dreading had finally arrived. There was no way to answer without revealing significantly more about her background. I was occasionally attached to special operations units for precision fire support, Staff Sergeant. A murmur went through the assembled students. Special operations assignments were not casual duties given to ordinary designated marksmen. How often is occasionally? Most of my second deployment, and all of my third deployment, Staff Sergeant. Rodriguez exchanged glances with the other instructors. The revelation that Maria had spent an entire deployment attached to Special Operations Forces changed their understanding of her qualifications significantly. We'll discuss your background in more detail later, Santos. For now, continue performing at your current level. As students dispersed after the debrief, Maria found herself surrounded by classmates with new questions about her experience. Special Operations Support? Chen asked. That's serious stuff. What units were you working with? I can't discuss specific unit designations, Maria replied, but it was good training for situations like today's exercise. Williams nodded thoughtfully. That explains why you seemed so comfortable with all the radio traffic and coordination requirements. Most of us were scrambling just to keep track of what was happening. Not everyone was impressed with the revelations about Maria's background. Harrison and several of his supporters saw her special operations experience as confirmation of their belief that she was receiving unfair advantages. Of course she performed well, Harrison complained loudly. She's had special training that none of the rest of us received. This isn't a fair comparison anymore. His comments sparked heated discussions among the students about whether Maria's advanced background gave her an unfair advantage in the competition for sniper school graduation. The controversy came to a head during their next major training event, a comprehensive field exercise that would test all their skills simultaneously. Students would be inserted into a large training area and required to survive for 72 hours while completing a series of missions. They would have to navigate to multiple objectives, engage targets at various distances, evade enemy forces, and coordinate with friendly units. It was designed to be the most challenging event of the entire course, and historically, it eliminated more students than any other single exercise. On the morning of the field exercise, tensions between students had reached a breaking point. Harrison openly accused Maria of having unfair advantages, while others defended her right to use whatever skills and experience she possessed. The argument threatened to undermine unit cohesion and create dangerous divisions during a demanding training event. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez addressed the situation directly during the pre-mission briefing. I'm aware of discussions regarding different experience levels among students. Let me clarify something important. Every student here earned their slot based on demonstrated qualifications. Previous experience, whether extensive or limited, is just part of what each person brings to this course. He looked around the assembled group sternly. Your job is not to worry about other students' backgrounds. Your job is to demonstrate that you can meet the standards required to become a Marine Scout sniper. Focus on your own performance. The field exercise began before dawn, with students inserted at different locations throughout the training area. Maria found herself partnered with Chen and one other Marine she didn't know well, Corporal James Murphy from North Carolina. Their first objective was 8 kilometers away through challenging terrain that included swamps, dense forest, and open ground that required careful movement during daylight hours. As they began their movement, Maria's advanced fieldcraft skills were immediately evident. She read the terrain expertly, selected routes that maximized concealment, and set a pace that would get them to their objective on time without exhausting the team. Murphy, who had been skeptical about her abilities, quickly changed his opinion as he watched her navigate through difficult terrain with confidence and skill. "Have you done this kind of thing before?" he asked during a brief rest stop. "Similar operations, different locations," Maria replied. "What kind of operations?" "Long-range reconnaissance, deep infiltration missions, target interdiction." Chen's eyebrows rose. Those were special operations mission types that suggested much more advanced training than anyone had realized. Target interdiction? You mean like taking out high-value targets behind enemy lines? Maria looked at him for a long moment before answering. She was tired of being evasive about her background, but she also knew that full disclosure might create more problems than it solved. Sometimes the mission required precision elimination of specific targets. Yes. Murphy stopped walking entirely. Jesus Christ, you're talking about assassination missions. I'm talking about legitimate military operations conducted under proper authority, Maria corrected. But yes, some of those operations involved eliminating enemy personnel who posed significant threats to American forces. The revelation hit both men like a physical blow. They had been training alongside someone whose combat experience included missions that most Marines only heard about in movies or classified briefings. "How many?" Chen asked quietly. "How many what? How many targets did you eliminate?" Maria was quiet for several seconds. They were approaching territory she had never discussed with anyone outside her previous unit. "Enough," she finally said. "More than I like to think about." They continued their movement in silence, both men processing the implications of what they had just learned. Maria wasn't just a designated marksman with some special operations experience. She was a trained killer who had operated at the highest levels of military precision warfare. Their first objective was a simulated enemy communications site that students were required to observe and report on. The site was heavily defended, with multiple observation posts and roving patrols. Maria quickly established an overwatch position that provided excellent visibility while remaining completely concealed. Her surveillance techniques were professional and thorough, identifying enemy positions and patrol patterns with remarkable speed. "I count 6 fixed positions and 2 mobile patrols," she reported to her teammates. "Radio antenna suggests this is definitely a communications facility. Patrol pattern indicates they change guard shifts every 2 hours. Murphy and Chen struggled to see even half of what she had identified. Her ability to read the tactical situation was far beyond their skill level. "How did you spot all that?" Murphy asked. "Practice," she said simply. "Plus, I've observed similar facilities before." "During your special operations assignments?" "Among other things." As they continued observing the objective, Maria began sketching a detailed tactical diagram that included enemy positions, patrol routes, and potential approach routes for a hypothetical assault. Her diagram was professional quality intelligence work that would have been valuable in real combat operations. When they moved to their next objective, her navigation skills continued to impress. She moved through the forest like someone who had done it hundreds of times under much more dangerous conditions. During a river crossing, she demonstrated water infiltration techniques that neither of her teammates had ever seen. She moved through the currents silently and efficiently, helping them cross without creating any disturbance that might alert nearby instructors. "Where did you learn to do that?" Chen whispered as they regrouped on the far bank. "Advanced training," she replied. "Water infiltration is a basic skill for certain types of missions." As the exercise continued through the second day, Maria's superior skills in every aspect of field operations became increasingly obvious. Her camouflage was perfect, her movement was silent, her navigation was flawless, and her shooting remained consistently excellent under field conditions. But it was her response to an unexpected emergency that finally convinced her teammates they were operating with someone truly exceptional. During their approach to the third objective, Murphy suffered a serious fall while climbing down a rocky slope. His ankle was badly twisted and possibly broken. He could barely walk, let alone continue the demanding field exercise. Most students would have called for medical evacuation, ending the exercise for their entire team. Maria assessed the situation quickly and began implementing solutions. "We're not calling for evacuation unless absolutely necessary," she told Chen. "Murphy, how's your shooting arm?" "Fine, it's just my ankle." "Then you can still complete the mission. We'll modify our approach to accommodate your injury." She fashioned a field-expedient splint from materials in her pack, providing enough support for Murphy to continue moving with assistance. Then she recalculated their route to their final objective, selecting paths that minimized the climbing and rough terrain that would be most difficult for Murphy. Her field medical skills and tactical adaptation impressed both men. This wasn't just military first aid training. She had clearly dealt with wounded personnel in combat situations before. "You've done this before, haven't you?" Chen asked as they resumed movement. "Taken care of wounded team members during actual missions?" "A few times," Maria admitted. "When you're operating in small teams behind enemy lines, everyone has to be capable of handling medical emergencies." "Behind enemy lines?" Murphy asked, despite the pain from his ankle. "You were operating behind enemy lines?" Maria realized she had revealed more than she intended, but there was no point in being evasive now. Deep reconnaissance missions sometimes require extended operations in enemy-controlled territory. Medical evacuation isn't always possible. The implications of her statement hit both men immediately. She was describing missions that required weeks or months of operation in hostile territory, completely cut off from friendly support. Jesus, Murphy breathed. What the hell kind of missions were you running? The kind that don't appear in unit histories, Maria replied grimly. Despite Murphy's injury, they reached their final objective on schedule. Maria's tactical adaptations had overcome what should have been a mission-ending problem. At the final objective, students were required to engage targets at extreme range under simulated combat stress. Instructors used smoke, noise, and time pressure to create realistic battlefield conditions. Maria's performance under stress was flawless. While other students struggled with the challenging conditions, she methodically engaged targets at 1,000 yards with remarkable accuracy. Her shooting stance, breathing control, and trigger technique remained perfect despite the chaos around her. She moved through the engagement sequence like someone who had done it many times under actual enemy fire. When the field exercise ended, Maria's team had achieved all objectives despite Murphy's injury. Most other teams had failed at least one major requirement. During the debriefing, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez addressed Maria directly. "Santos, your performance during this exercise was exceptional even by our highest standards. Your fieldcraft, leadership, and tactical skills suggest training and experience well beyond what we typically see." He paused, studying her carefully. "I think it's time for a complete discussion of your background. Report to my office after evening chow." As students returned to barracks, word spread quickly about Maria's exceptional performance during the field exercise. Combined with previous revelations about her special operations experience, a clear picture was emerging of someone whose qualifications far exceeded normal sniper school requirements. Some students viewed her with increased respect and admiration. Others, particularly those aligned with Harrison's complaints, felt even more resentful about competing against someone with advanced training. The tension was building toward a confrontation that would finally force Maria to reveal the complete truth about her background and experience. That evening, as she prepared for her meeting with Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, Maria knew that her time of partial disclosure was ending. The questions were becoming too specific, and the scrutiny too intense to continue hiding the full extent of her combat experience. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and probably complete revelation of the secrets she had carried for so long. The notches on her rifle would finally tell their full story. But tonight she focused on preparing for whatever consequences that revelation might bring. She had come too far to quit now, regardless of how others might react to learning the truth about who she really was and what she had done in service to her country. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez's office was Spartanly decorated with military efficiency. Awards and commendations lined one wall, while tactical maps and training schedules covered another. Maria sat at attention in the chair across from his desk, knowing this conversation would change everything. Rodriguez opened a thick folder that contained her complete military file. The document was much larger than what most students would have accumulated in their careers. "Santos, I've been reviewing your complete service record. The initial file we received for your sniper school application was heavily redacted. Now I understand why." He turned several pages, studying documents that had clearly been classified until recently. 3 deployments to Afghanistan. 2 years attached to Special Operations Task Force 373. Primary role: precision marksman for direct action missions targeting high-value individuals. Maria maintained her military bearing, but she felt the weight of finally having her background fully exposed. "You weren't just providing Overwatch support for infantry units," Rodriguez continued. "You were conducting targeted assassination missions against enemy leadership. Elimination of legitimate military targets under proper authority," Maria corrected quietly. 57 confirmed kills across 3 deployments, including the successful elimination of 6 high-value targets who had been specifically designated by Joint Special Operations Command. The number hung in the air between them. 57 enemy combatants eliminated by precision rifle fire. It was a kill count that placed Maria among the most effective snipers in modern military history. Rodriguez closed the file and looked directly at her. "Why are you here, Santos? With your experience and qualifications, you could write your own ticket to any assignment in the Marine Corps. Why attend sniper school when you already possess skills that exceed most of our instructors?" It was a question Maria had been dreading, because the honest answer revealed motivations she hadn't shared with anyone. "I want to be here legitimately, Staff Sergeant. I want to earn the title and recognition that comes with graduating from this school." Explain. "During my special operations assignments, I was attached personnel. My achievements were classified, my role was unofficial, and my contributions will never be publicly recognized. I was good enough to do the job, but I was never officially acknowledged as qualified." She paused, gathering her thoughts carefully. "I want to prove that I belong here not because someone needed a favor done quietly, but because I earned it through the same training and evaluation that every scout sniper completes." Rodriguez nodded slowly, beginning to understand her motivation. "You want official recognition for skills you've already proven in combat." "Yes, Staff Sergeant, and I want to serve in a role where my capabilities are acknowledged and utilized properly, rather than hidden in classified operations that officially never happened." "Does your team know about your kill count?" "No, Staff Sergeant. Chen and Murphy know I've been involved in special operations, but they don't know the specific details." "And Corporal Harrison's continued complaints about unfair advantages?" "Harrison believes what he chooses to believe, Staff Sergeant. Nothing I say will change his opinion." Rodriguez considered her words for several minutes. Outside his office, evening training activities continued as other students prepared for upcoming challenges. "Santos, I'm going to ask something of you that may be difficult. Tomorrow we begin the final phase of training. Students will face their most challenging tests, and some will not succeed. Your classmates need to understand exactly who they've been training alongside." Maria felt a knot forming in her stomach. "I want you to be completely honest about your background when appropriate opportunities arise. Your experiences can help other students learn, but the secrecy and speculation are creating problems within the class." "I understand, Staff Sergeant. There's something else. Tomorrow's final exercise will include challenges specifically designed to test your capabilities. We need to verify that your skills translate to our training standards, not just special operations requirements." "Roger, Staff Sergeant." Dismissed. As Maria left Rodriguez's office, she knew tomorrow would either validate her place in the sniper school or expose limitations she hadn't anticipated. Either way, the truth about her background would finally be completely revealed. The next morning brought unseasonably cold weather and heavy fog that reduced visibility to less than 100 meters. Perfect conditions for the final exercise that would determine which students would graduate and which would be sent back to their regular units. Students assembled in the pre-dawn darkness for a briefing on their ultimate challenge. The exercise would test every skill they had learned during the past 11 weeks: stalking, camouflage, marksmanship, navigation, and tactical decision-making. "This is your final evaluation," Staff Sergeant Rodriguez announced. "You will work individually to complete a series of missions that simulate real-world sniper operations. Success requires demonstrating mastery of all course subjects." He outlined the scenario. Enemy forces had occupied a training facility, and students were tasked with conducting reconnaissance, eliminating specific targets, and exfiltrating without detection. Each student would face different challenges based on their individual skill levels. "Some of you will face more demanding requirements than others," Rodriguez continued, his eyes briefly meeting Maria's. "Evaluations will be based on your demonstrated capabilities throughout the course. As students prepared their equipment, Chen approached Maria with obvious concern. Something's different about today. The instructors seem more serious than usual. Final evaluations are always intense, Maria replied, checking her rifle and gear one last time. No, it's more than that. I think they're planning something special for you specifically. Before Maria could respond, Corporal Harrison inserted himself into the conversation. Of course they have special plans for her, probably going to make sure the Golden Girl passes no matter what. Give it a rest, Harrison, Chen said with obvious irritation. She's earned everything she's achieved here. Has she? Or has she been getting help based on her supposed special operations background? Anyone can make up stories about classified missions. Maria turned to face Harrison directly. She was tired of his constant complaints, and Rodriguez had essentially ordered her to be completely honest. You want to know about my background, Harrison? Here's the truth. The area around them went quiet as other students stopped their preparations to listen. During my 3 deployments to Afghanistan, I was attached to Special Operations Task Force 373. My job was eliminating high-value enemy targets through precision rifle fire, 57 confirmed kills across 3 combat tours. The number hit the assembled students like a physical blow. Several soldiers stared at her in disbelief. Harrison's face went pale. 57 kills? That's more confirmed enemy kills than anyone in this training class will probably achieve in their entire career, Maria finished. So when you complain about unfair advantages, remember that I learned these skills by using them to keep American soldiers alive in combat. She shouldered her rifle and began walking toward the starting line. Every skill you've seen me demonstrate, I learned because lives depended on getting it right the first time. If that seems like an unfair advantage to you, maybe you should reconsider whether you belong here. The silence that followed was complete. Harrison stood frozen, finally understanding that he had been challenging someone whose combat experience exceeded anything he could imagine. Chen caught up with Maria as she reached the starting line. 57? He asked quietly. 57 confirmed, probably more that couldn't be verified. Jesus Christ, Maria. That makes you one of the most effective snipers in Marine Corps history. It makes me someone who did her job when American lives were at stake, she replied. Today, I'm just another student trying to graduate from sniper school. The exercise began with students deploying to different locations throughout the massive training area. Maria's assignment was the most challenging of any student. She had to infiltrate to within 800 meters of a heavily defended target, eliminate 3 specific enemy positions, and exfiltrate without being detected by roving patrols. The route to her target required crossing open ground, navigating through dense forest, and approaching an objective that was protected by multiple observation posts. It was a mission profile similar to operations she had conducted in Afghanistan, but with the added pressure of evaluation by instructors who were watching her every move. Maria began her infiltration before dawn, using the darkness and heavy fog to mask her initial movement. Her approach to the training area was methodical and patient, taking advantage of every piece of available concealment. As she moved through the forest, she encountered the first of several challenges the instructors had prepared specifically for her. A simulated enemy patrol equipped with night vision equipment and trained to detect infiltrating personnel. Most students would have been discovered immediately. Maria had spent months learning to evade similar patrols during actual combat operations. She went to ground and waited motionless as the patrol passed within 10 feet of her position. Her camouflage was perfect, blending seamlessly with the natural vegetation. Her discipline was absolute, controlling her breathing and movement so completely that she became invisible even at close range. After the patrol passed, she continued her approach toward the target area. The fog was beginning to lift, making concealment more difficult but improving visibility for long-range shooting. At 1,000 meters from her target, she established her final observation post. Through her scope, she could see the 3 targets she was required to eliminate, simulated enemy personnel positioned at different locations around the objective. The first target was at 800 meters, the maximum range specified for the exercise. The second target was at 650 meters, but partially concealed behind cover. The third target was at 500 meters, but positioned in a way that required shooting through a narrow gap between 2 buildings. Each shot would require different calculations for wind, distance, and environmental conditions. More importantly, each shot would alert enemy forces to her presence, requiring rapid target engagement before defensive positions could be manned. Maria began her pre-shot preparations with the calm professionalism that had kept her alive during 57 previous engagements. She calculated wind drift, atmospheric pressure, and target elevation for each shot. She planned her engagement sequence to minimize exposure time and maximize the probability of success. Her first shot at 800 meters was perfect center mass. The target dropped immediately, confirming a successful hit. Within seconds, she had shifted to the second target and fired again. Another perfect hit. The third shot required the most precision, threading through the narrow gap between buildings. Maria adjusted her position slightly to improve her angle and squeezed the trigger. The shot passed cleanly through the gap and struck the target dead center. 3 targets eliminated in less than 30 seconds. Her shooting performance had been flawless under pressure. Now came the most dangerous part of the mission: exfiltration, while enemy forces searched for her position. In real combat, this was often when snipers were killed or captured. Maria began moving immediately after her last shot, knowing that enemy forces would quickly triangulate her general location. Her exfiltration route was different from her infiltration route, using terrain features to mask her movement and avoid predictable escape paths. As she moved through the forest, she encountered multiple search patrols attempting to locate and capture her. Her evasion techniques were masterful, using natural concealment and patient movement to avoid detection. At one point, a patrol came so close that she could hear their radio communications. She remained motionless in a drainage ditch for 20 minutes while they searched the area around her hiding spot. Her escape and evasion training from special operations paid off completely. She reached her extraction point without being detected, completing the entire mission exactly as specified. When the exercise ended and students reassembled for debriefing, Maria's performance was the subject of intense discussion among instructors and students. Other students had struggled with much simpler assignments. Several had been detected during infiltration, others had missed their targets at long range, and most had been captured during exfiltration. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez addressed the assembled students with obvious satisfaction. Today's exercise demonstrated the difference between basic competence and true mastery of sniper skills. Some of you performed adequately. Others exceeded expectations. His eyes found Maria in the group. Santos, your performance today was at the level we expect from instructors, not students. Flawless infiltration, perfect shooting under combat stress, and successful exfiltration against active pursuit. That level of performance comes from experience that cannot be taught in a classroom. He turned to address the entire class. Santos has been completely honest about her background when asked. She has 57 confirmed enemy kills from 3 combat deployments as a special operations marksman. That experience has prepared her for challenges that exceed our normal training requirements. A murmur went through the assembled students. Some had suspected her background was extensive, but the full scope of her combat experience was still shocking. Her presence here is not about meeting quotas or political correctness, Rodriguez continued. She is pursuing official qualification in skills she has already proven in combat. She wants to earn the recognition that her classified assignments never allowed her to receive. He looked directly at Harrison. Any questions about whether Sergeant Santos belongs in this program should be answered by her performance throughout this course. She has demonstrated superior skills in every area of evaluation. Harrison had nothing to say. His complaints had been thoroughly answered by Maria's consistent excellence. After the debriefing, Chen approached Maria with obvious admiration. "I can't believe I've been training alongside someone with your background. 57 kills. That's legendary stuff." "It's not legendary," Maria replied. "It's just what happened when I did my job. Still, it explains why everything seemed so easy for you. You've been doing this stuff for real while the rest of us were just learning." "Nothing about this has been easy," she corrected. "The only difference is that I've had practice under conditions where mistakes meant people died." Murphy joined their conversation, still moving carefully on his injured ankle. "I have to ask, those marks on your rifle, are they—" Maria looked at her weapon, where small notches were barely visible on the wooden stock. She had hoped no one would notice them, but Murphy's eye for detail had caught what others missed. "Yes," she said simply. "Each mark represents a confirmed kill in combat." The revelation hit both men hard. They were looking at physical evidence of Maria's combat experience, tangible proof of the lives she had taken in service to her country. "That's why you were so reluctant to talk about your background," Chen realized. "Carrying that kind of responsibility? It's not something you discuss casually," Maria agreed. "Each of those marks represents someone who died because I pulled the trigger. It's not a game or a competition. It's the most serious responsibility a soldier can carry." The final week of sniper school focused on polishing skills and preparing for graduation. Students who had survived the final evaluation continued refining their marksmanship and tactical knowledge. Maria's revelation about her combat experience had fundamentally changed the dynamics within the class. Some students approached her with new respect and requests for advice. Others seemed intimidated by the scope of her experience. Harrison had largely stopped his complaints, but he remained distant and resentful. The gap between his expectations and reality had been too large for him to accept gracefully. During one of their last shooting exercises, an instructor noticed Harrison struggling with long-range targets and suggested he seek advice from more experienced students. "Santos has demonstrated excellent long-range shooting throughout the course. Perhaps she could share some techniques." Harrison's pride prevented him from asking for help directly, but Maria approached him anyway. "Want some advice on those long-range shots?" "I suppose," he replied reluctantly. "Your fundamentals are solid, but you're rushing the trigger squeeze. At long range, patience is more important than speed." She spent 30 minutes working with him on breathing control and trigger technique. Her instruction was patient and professional, focusing on helping him improve rather than demonstrating her own superiority. Harrison's shooting improved noticeably with her guidance. His final shots of the day were among his best of the entire course. As they cleared their weapons, he spoke quietly to Maria. "I owe you an apology. I spent this whole course complaining about advantages I thought you were getting. I didn't understand that you earned your skills the hard way." "Apology accepted," Maria replied. "We're all Marines trying to become better at our job. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're here. Having someone with your experience in our class has made all of us better." It was the closest thing to genuine respect Harrison had shown anyone during the entire course. Graduation day arrived with perfect weather and a formal ceremony that recognized the achievements of students who had survived the demanding 13-week program. Of the 32 Marines who had started the course, only 18 were graduating. Maria stood with her classmates as their names were called, and they received their Scout Sniper qualification. When her name was announced, the applause was noticeably stronger than for other graduates. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez presented her with the same certificate and pin that every graduate received, but he also had additional words for her achievement. "Sergeant Santos, you came to this course with skills that exceeded our normal requirements. You could have demanded recognition based on your combat experience alone. Instead, you chose to earn qualification through the same training and evaluation that every scout sniper completes. He paused, making sure his words carried appropriate weight. Your commitment to earning what you had already proven demonstrates the professionalism and dedication that define the best Marines. You have not only graduated from this course, you have set a new standard for excellence. As the ceremony concluded and students prepared to return to their duty stations, Maria reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had come to sniper school seeking official recognition for skills developed in classified operations. She was leaving with something more valuable: the respect of peers who understood what she had accomplished, and the satisfaction of knowing she had earned her place through honest effort. The marks on her rifle would always remind her of the serious responsibilities she had carried in combat. But today she also carried the knowledge that she belonged among the elite group of Marines qualified to serve as scout snipers. Chen approached her as they gathered their personal equipment for departure. So, what's next? With your qualifications, you can probably get any assignment you want. I've been offered a position as an instructor here, Maria replied. Apparently, they think my experience might be valuable for training future snipers. That makes sense. You could teach things that can't be learned from textbooks. Maybe. But first, I'm taking some leave time. 3 deployments and 13 weeks of training school. I think I've earned a vacation. As she loaded her gear into the transport vehicle, Maria took one last look at the sniper school that had tested her skills and forced her to confront her own motivations. She had proven that she belonged here not because of special treatment or political considerations, but because she had earned it through demonstrated excellence. The doubts and suspicions that had followed her throughout the course had been answered conclusively. More importantly, she had proven something to herself. Her combat experience was not just a collection of classified operations that would never be publicly acknowledged. It was the foundation for a legitimate military specialty that would allow her to serve with official recognition and respect. The marks on her rifle told a story of dedication, sacrifice, and achievement that could not be denied or diminished. They represented not just enemies defeated, but American lives saved through precision and professionalism under the most demanding circumstances. As the transport pulled away from the training facility, Maria looked forward to whatever challenges awaited her next assignment. She was ready for them, confident in her abilities and secure in the knowledge that she had earned her place among the Marine Corps' most elite warriors. The woman who had been told she didn't belong in sniper school was now qualified to train others in the deadly art she had mastered through combat experience. It was a journey that had tested her skills, challenged her motivations, and ultimately validated her place among the best snipers in the world. The kill count marked on her rifle had finally told its complete story.